everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on cybersecurity. We want to share some good news. Uh, uh, we just finished our one of the largest conference in India, and we do collaborate around 100 corporation inside India, especially those who are in software industry and smart city industry. You know that World Talent Economy Forum. Right now we are doing agriculture and energy and housing projects in Bangladesh and in India. So this is one of the important milestone for all of us. Beside that, we are collaborating with IIT Kanpur. So we are bringing many talented startup for solve the complex problem of the emerging economy. From next week, many entrepreneurs will join in World Talent Economy Forums of online dialogue. So I want to give special thanks to Professor David Smith, Mr. David Schumacher, Transhumanist Party, Tando, those who continuously support World Talent Economy Forum for growing our activities, our economical activities. So today we're going to discuss about cybersecurity. First, I would like to give chance Mr. David Schumacher. Mr. David.
Yes, Mr. David and Mr. David this morning. I kind of like the way the show is balancing out there, Dr. Sharif. Yes. Cybersecurity. We've talked about that on this show before. And it's always good to revisit because it's a topic that's not going away. But first, let me start, as I always do, at the basics. So, what is cybersecurity? It's a practice of protecting computer systems, networks, digital information, primarily from unauthorized access to prevent theft, damage, and other malicious activities. And we know, all being computer users, being on in the audience or being here on the panel, that these threats come in many forms, like viruses, malware, phishing attacks, social engineering, and then hacking. And I think hacking is the one that really gets the newspaper. It gets a lot of time in the press, and probably rightly so. I just read IBM and another company. They do a cybersecurity survey every year. And the one for 2023 shows about the same trends as they've shown in the past, that the typical security breach costs a company, a country, wealthy individuals, on average, more than $4 million per incident. That's a lot. That's a big target. That's something for, cyber criminals to go after. And while I listed a number of different threats, the big one continues to be having your data hijacked and ransomed back to you, and they call that ransomware. So that seems to be a type of attack that has worked well in the past and continues to today work well too. That's one of the challenges that we have. But with challenges come opportunity, and I like to talk about opportunity because for those that are looking for opportunity, cybersecurity is a career field, an industry that's not going away anytime soon. I mean, we talk about it in terms of computers, but think about it. The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, all of the technologies that we are becoming more and more used to and dependent on are all computer-based, making every one of them a target for just the type of attacks that I was talking about. So if you're someone that's looking at a career change, new career, getting into the career force, I would say take a look at cybersecurity. If you want to look at particular areas where you could be effective inside cybersecurity, I think cybersecurity counseling, consulting rather, should maybe be at the top of the list. Businesses need people in the business doing cybersecurity. That's a good place to be involved. But the consulting part brings in a second pair of eyes. It brings in a second opinion. It brings in new information. Consultants need to stay on the leading edge of what's going on. And that leading edge is moving faster and faster. So I speak from a little experience from an IT infrastructure side that there is a difficulty in maintaining your current infrastructure and constantly educating yourself on new hardware, software, middleware, new threats, new opportunities. It's tough, and consultants can do that. Likewise, managed security services. Maybe a business has excellent people inside to do their day-to-day jobs, but maybe security is something that might be better left to a core of individuals that are consulting and managing services across many different businesses. Whether you're working as a consultant, whether you're working in an external or internal service, training is a constant requirement. I already talked about that. So there are careers to be had, performing, delivering, keeping current cybersecurity training. And then, of course, innovative products. Things come along that we haven't thought of. I remember early firewalls, and I remember all the innovation that went into firewalls, and firewalls are still very important today. And I'm just using that as an example. You can take an existing product, improve it, or maybe add a product that you wouldn't have otherwise. And then I'm getting a lot of background noise. Perhaps if we could mute, that might be helpful. Cybersecurity startups is probably the exciting area, and that would be taking these new products and developing them, whether they be in the solution in form of a product or a service, or providing innovation to existing products and services. There's a number of different ways that you could do a cybersecurity startup. But it all has to do with staying on the edge. The bottom line is that cybersecurity presents many business opportunities. The demand for cybersecurity services and products is expected to continue to grow, and I think grow at an accelerated rate. On the next time around, I want to talk about some of the innovative cybersecurity solutions that I see out there. But I think it's time to find out what the other David has on his mind about cybersecurity this morning, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Professor David Smith.
Well, thank you, Sharif. Cybersecurity is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and what we're doing in it. And the field is very broad, and even the comments we're seeing in the public comments today kind of take us there, where there are technically, as they say, interconnecting advances continue. That cat is out the bag, and we're not going back to from our digital world, I believe. So, in my view, cybersecurity is a never-ending race, and that the challenge we have is the rate of change is accelerating. Companies, governments are continuing to invest in technology to run their businesses, their companies. The products we as consumers are using are increasingly smart, digital, and connected. And because of the pandemic and other things, we're laying more and more systems into our networks to support remote work, to enhance the customer experience, to look at advanced means to do education, healthcare, retail, banking. And we see that these all generate value, but they also create potential new vulnerabilities that we have. The other side of the coin, though, adversaries are no longer limited to individual actors. And what we're seeing is highly sophisticated organizations that are not only leveraging integrated tools and capabilities, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we're seeing them actually set up infrastructure on the bad actor side of cybersecurity. You're seeing collaborations put together. You're seeing uh, repositories put out, particularly on the dark web, of all the tools and capabilities that are required to be successful in hacking an organization, hacking an individual, stealing privacy, stealing other elements like that. And unfortunately, the scope of the threat is growing, and really no organization is immune today. You know, that the old saying is, if you think you haven't been hacked, you just don't know that you have been, because cybersecurity is really something that's going to hit every, not just business, not just government, but individuals as well. I can tell you, I look at the statistics from my firewalls and my zero threat programs and stuff, and I can tell you, even my home networks are scanned every day, and we block attempts almost every day coming into our home networks. Um, and we're seeing it going everywhere. So even today's most sophisticated cybersecurity tools we have, our cyber controls, no matter how effective they are today, with this escalating mouse game between the people trying to compromise cybersecurity and where we are today, that's going to be a continuing battle going back and forth between us and the folks who want to do bad. Uh, and so, in this leadership, in this area, we have to ask: are we prepared for accelerated digitalization in the next 3 years? Are we looking far enough in the future to understand how cybersecurity is going to impact it? And just some real quick numbers. David gave you the statistic from IBM that is actually a really good number, that the average cost of a data breach was $3.86 million globally. In the United States, it's about 8.64 million for the cost of an average corporate data breach. But as I began to look broader, um, we're seeing some other numbers that are very, very interesting. First of all, let me just give you a simple market number. Um, the global cybersecurity market size for enterprise deployment, this does not include personal thing, is projected to grow from in 2022, it was $155 billion market size. And by 2029, it's projected to grow to $380 billion at a compound annual growth rate of about 13.5%. And so it is really growing quite a bit on that side. You know, it's driven by a lot of things, like the more of the increased use of e-commerce platforms, the advent of technology such as the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, cloud marketplaces, and a lot of new players coming online in this area. I can tell you, for example, in North America alone, there are over 100,000 cybersecurity companies. And the future outlook is kind of interesting. If I just look at spending by service providers by 2025, it's projected to be over $100 billion. There's a 15% annual increase in cost related to cybercrime. And this cybercrime will reach $10.5 trillion in the year 2025. $10.5 trillion. Uh, most businesses need to increase their spending for security. Right now, there, as David mentioned, a vast shortage of cybersecurity personnel. David, the number that I have from McKinsey is it's 3.5 million cybersecurity positions are now open worldwide. And I think that number might be low as we see where the market's going and how we're seeing it and how we need to address these disruptions. So let me just give you off the top of my head some of the major cybersecurity trends that are going to affect governments and companies around. One of them is the really unprecedented growth of data and how we're putting information platforms in place to use it. You've heard me, Sharif, and others on prior ones talk about the future of data and how it's growing every 2 years, and how the Internet of Things is going to even increase that more. So you're seeing that really setting up the likelihood for more breaches and what's going to do. And this is everything from financial transactions to social media to the purchasing we do, our healthcare records and everything. So let me just go back to 2020 for a minute. In 2020, on average, every person on Earth created 1.7 megabytes of data each second. That's every person on Earth each second. That's a lot of data, and it's data that we need to protect. And we're doing a lot with it, but we are not only gathering a lot more data on people, we're also centralizing them. We're storing them on the cloud. We're gaining access to many, many more people. And this is just going to increasingly make our personal information susceptible to other people. Just in the last week, there was a hotel chain that announced a breach of over 10 million guest records. So we're seeing that. As I said earlier, hackers are using AI, machine learning, and other technologies to launch really increasingly sophisticated attacks. It's cyber hacking today is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. It's really interesting. They have actually institutional corporate-like hierarchies. They have R&D budgets, and they're using automation and other things over it. And over the next several years, we're seeing the end-to-end attack cycle life getting shorter, because they're being able to go from weeks to days or even hours now. And we're seeing that. So for example, this year, there is a malware targeting banks that is running automatically, and it's targeted to some of the pandemic related communications, and we're seeing that. But also we're seeing that there's an ever-growing regulatory landscape and gaps in resources and knowledge to try to outpace cybersecurity. And we're going to be, I will talk a little bit more about that, but what is really needed and what I see doing is when we see things like the NIST Common Security Framework and other frameworks like this being installed and working, and the new ransomware ones and others, is what we have to do is, in my words, we need to build a cybersecurity framework that looks over the horizon. We can no longer just be active and being responsive to the threats we detect. We have to be able to look over the horizon and anticipate threats and have solutions in place before we even have an attack from them, which is going to be very difficult to do. But that's necessary when you look at the pace we are working with today. So Sharif, that's my first comments. I have a lot more, but I think this is a good place for me to stop right now.
Thank you, Professor David. Now I request Mr. Donald.
Well, the main thing that hackers use to get into systems is and always has been social engineering, which is basically humans make mistakes. So if you look at the way that people, they get into systems is basically they send emails to people with links in them, and they click on the links, and when they click on the links, it installs a virus, and that virus then gets into the system. Now, what is a virus? Basically, in your system, there's a possibility there's certain kinds of programs or certain kinds of pieces of programs called device drivers, and those pieces of programs are pieces of programs that manipulate the hardware inside your computer. So hardware in your computer is your memory, your CPU, your disk drives, your printers, other kinds of parts of your computer that are below what you see. So you see a user interface, and the user interface interacts with the operating system, and then the operating system interacts with the device drivers. And so operating systems are things like Windows, iOS, Linux, and these operating systems, their job is to make it seamless to you so that you can interact with these systems, or with these subsystems, in a way that make it seem to you as if they're operating independently, that you don't see it. Conceptually, a file is something that's something that works with your cognitive idea of what a file is, or a printer works with something your cognitive idea of what a file is. But if you get into the operating system, at some level, these are machine language, which is just at one level, it's just numbers. So when you program in machine language, if you get to the lowest level, you're writing programs that look like 5,922, 45,006, and so on, like that. That's the way that the programs actually look. And so what bad guys do is they write programs that look like that. They know it so well that they can write programs that are just those kinds of numbers. And what happens then is that when you click on those links, they install these programs, and these programs can get into your computer, and they can alter your disk drives, or they can alter your memory, and they can instruct your computer to do things that you don't want your computer to do. And one of the things that is common, is very, very expensive, is ransomware. And so they can write a fairly small program that can go into your disk drive and encrypt it. And what that means is that it alters the bits on your disk drive so that they're useless to you. And then what happens is they have a program that can unencrypt it so that it can change it back so it's useful to you. But it's impossible to figure out what they've done, because what happens is they write it so the program runs and then it removes itself, so it's gone. So you don't know what it did. You don't have any way of finding out. And then they've charged, for instance, very sophisticated organizations, like, for instance, the University of San Francisco had all of their data encrypted, and they paid about $1.1 million in Bitcoin to get their data back. And so this is a very common kind of attack. And the way that they do it is just social engineering, basically. People make the mistake of clicking on a link they shouldn't click on. So the best security is don't click on links if you're not 100% sure where they came from, and learn to look at the links and understand how links are supposed to look. Because if you get a link that says Bank of America, for an instance, and you look at the domain name, and the domain name is something like, hacker.russia.ru, you know it's not really from Bank of America. and so you don't. It's really something you don't want to click on. And one of the most interesting cyber attacks that I've heard of in a long time. Your phone, most phones these days, if you have a landline, are they come through your internet service. So I have Comcast, and I have a landline through Comcast, and I had a phone number that I've had for 30 some years or more. And so I kept it but when I dropped my regular landline, I moved it to Comcast. Now, somebody the other day told I saw it on TikTok. She got a call from the bank, and it said, Bank of America or whatever bank it was. And they called and they said, well, there's a problem with your account. And the caller ID was from her bank. And they managed to finesse her account information from her. And using this, they basically stole money from her. And fascinating way of using, again, social engineering to be able to rob people. And so by far the main way that people steal information is not using programs and attacking you, but by tricking you into you giving them information or otherwise cracking it. Now, that goes up to higher levels. Our government in the United States is utterly incompetent. They're very elderly people that have absolutely no concept of how computers work, most of them. And recently, they're trying to enact a law which is basically what they say is what they're trying to do is ban TikTok. But if you look at the law itself, part of what they're doing to ban TikTok is to make absolutely sure that if they ban TikTok, people can't get around it and use VPNs. So they're making it an extremely serious crime to use VPNs. It's literally having a server that creates a VPN is 20 years in jail, $1 million fine. And so that is absolutely absurd, because VPNs all corporations use VPNs so that their staff can work at home. You have to use VPNs in medical situations for HIPAA compliance. VPNs are absolutely one of the most important security things that we have. But they don't know this. They don't understand this because they're morons. And we look at the idea of, and in Europe and other countries, they've worked on the security of Facebook and things like that. They're looking at your behavior in very, very sophisticated ways. So in the United States, they took people's preferences and connections and used that data and analyzed it to be able to target people for elections. And there was a artificial intelligence firm, as others have mentioned, called they didn't mention its name, called Cambridge Analytics, which took this data and used it to target people and was instrumental in getting Trump elected. And so one of the things of security, it's very complicated, because having this data allows these things to work, so that you have the benefit of being able to have the experience of getting connected to people that have similar tastes and similar interests. So Facebook and TikTok and things like that, that makes one of the things that makes them valuable. So security sometimes is kind of it's amorphous, because in a way you want it, in other ways you don't want it. And in Europe and California and some other places, they've put restrictions in place where you get to decide whether your information can be shared with these kinds of people. There's laws now. And so part of what we need to have for security is sophisticated people who actually understand how these things work, and start making regulations and laws that start protecting us from the and defining, as others have said, a framework so that we can start being more secure in a legal structure that makes sense, that's not insane, like the idea of blocking VPNs. So that's thank you very much for the opportunity to say that.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. David Schumacher.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sharif. Thanks to David and Donald for their comments. On the first go-around, I talked about what cybersecurity is, and I talked a little bit about the opportunities that were there, whether it be business opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities, opportunities for individuals to be involved. I believe what's been said by our other panelists this morning just make all of those even more real. What I want to talk about now, though, is a little bit about what are some of the cybersecurity solutions that are innovative, maybe not brand new, but they continue to evolve in their innovation. For example, AI is all in the news these days, and we had a show earlier this week where we talked about AI specifically. Well, AI is, to me, a little bit like electricity. AI is going to be in everything, just like electricity is in everything. So it will certainly be part of what's going on with security. See, artificial intelligence is being used and can be used further to be able to allow us to respond quicker. I remember the days of network operation centers and having people scanning and monitoring and having scripted responses to various things. Well, you write an algorithm and now you take those scripts and you can run them. But AI then can be much quicker at sniffing out what's going on, especially if the threat itself is generated from an artificial intelligence. We need something that can be able to move at those same speeds. So if cryptography, if the idea of artificial intelligence appeals to you, this might be an area that you might want to consider educating yourself on or investing in. I mean, there's companies that do this. So that's another opportunity for us individuals, is also to invest in the companies that are working in these areas. And I think AI-powered security is one of those. In previous shows, we've talked about blockchain. Well, blockchain is also something that I think we're going to see moving to the electricity model. It, or something like it, will be pretty much in everything that we touch. So blockchain can be used as well as an innovation in security by helping secure transactions, and something that's a very tamper-resistant type of ledger. It can be used for tamper-resistant logging, can be used for a number of different things. Also been around for a while is zero trust architecture, which essentially says don't trust anyone or any device on your network. When I got started in IT infrastructure a number of years ago, we did have certain trusted environments. We had one-way trust relationships. We had negotiated two-way trust relationships. In zero trust architecture, it's just that every user and device has to be verified and authenticated before accessing anything. And I wanted to explain that a little bit because, as obvious as that sounds, that's not always been the case. We have speed and cost trade-offs to take into account. And with increased computer hardware speed and efficiencies in coding through the use of artificial intelligences at various levels, we can afford to provide this type of trusting architecture. Speed, one of the areas that when we talk about in speed that we think about is quantum computing. So that can work for us or against us in this area. For example, quantum computers can process information, and keep in mind that we're in the infancy of quantum computing. But the whole idea here is to be able to speed and do things like in simulations or in other data-rich environments that require a lot of speed to process. Our conventional computers are not up to the task. So when we write crypto keys, we realize that there's no crypto key that can't be compromised. It's just a matter of time. If that matter of time is, we anticipate that it would take a year or 10 years to break a key, then we trade the keys out before that time cycle. With quantum computing, we can take what used to take years or decades to break a key and turn that maybe into minutes or hours. We can also use quantum computing on the other side, an arms race, if you will, to be able to change keys at an incredibly fast rate. And then there are algorithms being developed out of the same IBM report that I quoted earlier. There is now a certification for crypto keys that can withstand at least the current level of quantum computing. And that's going to have to continue. So we're going to see an arms race there. And then the last one is in the area of cloud security. And once again, we've talked about cloud on previous shows and how we're moving data and so forth to the cloud and some of the protection that we do there and how we use things like cloud access security brokers to be able to determine who has access and how that access is. But this is another area of innovation in cybersecurity solutions that might be something to invest your time educating yourself, whether it be for a job or whether it be to make you smarter in doing your current job, or to invest money in a business sense or in an investment sense. So these are some ideas. All of these ideas will not solve the problem. The key here is to stay ahead of threats and to do a better job of staying ahead of threats than probably what we're doing today. Thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Now I request Professor David Smith.
Well, Sharif, thank you. I put together a couple of slides, and that can really help us understand this from some different places. But what I'd like to say as I get into the slides is that there's really three big pieces of cybersecurity. And Donald touched upon these earlier, and David touched upon them. But let me just read back and emphasize it. It's people, process, and technology. As both Donald and David said, the people are some of the biggest threats you have in cybersecurity. The second one is process. People don't like to do things. We'll talk more about that. And then the technology, and I've talked about the technology explosion. Everything's become digital. So this is kind of interesting. If you look at from 2002 to 2020, at the number of cyber security threats increasing, that's a really steep curve, and it's continuing even faster today. So that the threats that Donald and David and I have been talking about are increasing at a rate that is extremely fast. And our spending on cybersecurity really has changed as well, where in the past, the largest percentage was focused on pre-attacks and then on attacks. Today, the largest percentage of our spending in cybersecurity is actually what do we do when we're attacked? How do we recover from it? Donald talked about the type of encryption that has been used in many of the ransomware attacks. We're looking at ways to do that. And the other thing is, in the past, very few of our cybersecurity solutions were delivered from the cloud. They are increasingly delivered from the cloud all the time now. And we saw in 2020, it was about 60%. Today in 2023, that figure is closer to 85% now of our cybersecurity solutions are delivered from the cloud. And just to look at North America as an example, I talked earlier about the spending increases, but look in this same period that I just showed in the other slide, how our spending has increased from 2020, where we are today and where it's projected to be by 2029. And I actually think that this slope of increases might be low when I'm seeing that the impact of cyber breaches and privacy and everything is in the trillions of dollars. So this spend rate might actually be low as we talk about going to the future. We talked about frameworks, and I talked about the NIST one. And the NIST CFF is one that I particularly like. It has been updated. There's now a NIST framework for, as David talked about, the quantum side too. And NIST has come out with standards for quantum encryption, quantum security against quantum encryption attacks as well. But the NIST Common Security Framework is really well suited for some of what's doing. The first part of the framework is identify. It really helps you develop an overall risk management approach. Because as I said before, cybersecurity is actually risk management because you are going to be attacked. You are going to have your human capital try to be exploited with all different types of attacks. You're going to have your suppliers attacked to try to get back into you. You're going to have people, if you're in retail and others who sell your stuff, attacked. And they're also going to try to come back up the chain to get into you. We're seeing increasing attacks in logistics and supply chain today. We're seeing major attacks on critical infrastructure in all the places we use our services. So you've got to look at your risk analysis. How do you protect it? And how do you put the elements in part? How do you manage identities? How do you secure access? How do you protect data? And very large, how do you train users? Users, as both David and Donald and I have said, is the most susceptible part. And then the third part of the NIST Common Security Framework is how do you detect, how do you know that you're under attack? I can tell you some of the largest data breaches that have happened. It took them days or even weeks to know they're under attack because of the methods used. And I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. I put together a list of things that you can do to protect yourself, because I know Sharif always asks for this. So Sharif, I'm actually going to be proactive today and do it before you ask. But how do you detect? The other one is, how do you respond? Once you know you're under attack, what do you do? Because if you, for example, have not kept up with backups and things, once you're under attack, it's too late to do backups, because you're going to be backing up attack surfaces and things too. But you need to look at, how do you respond? How do you take the action? There are a number of specialty security companies out today that will help you respond. The NIST Common Security Framework has links to literally probably hundreds of different scenarios to help you respond. And finally, how do you recover? I can give you a personal example, which I hate to do, but I'll give this one to you. In one of the companies I'm involved with, we had one of our sites where It was attacked, and it was attacked fairly hard. And the challenge with this is it was software that we had written decades ago, but it was being delivered to third world nations where the uh, computing hardware was behind the times. This particular software was being delivered to one of the poorest nations in this hemisphere. And in the government, over 70% of the machines were still running Windows XP. Uh, and that's an awfully old operating system. So we had to deploy a system there that is compatible with that generation of hardware and operating systems. And unfortunately, an adversary saw that, and they went and installed one of the things that Donald had talked about, a BitLocker type of encryption on it, and froze the site up and demanded a payment in a cryptocurrency. Luckily, our systems were such that we were able to take that offline and recover from some continuous backups we were doing on that one, where we were able to take it offline, reproxy the addresses that were used, and actually change it to a way that added more overhead but kept it secure, and recover that actually within less than an hour, which totally frustrated the ransomware attempt. But you've got to understand that you have to know you're being attacked. Once you detect it, you have to decide what type of attack it is, uh, make your reaction, and then recover. And there's practices that can help with all of those. This, Sharif, I'm almost going to use this as part of what I had wanted to use on my conclusion, but it fits so well here. I put together a list of 11 best practices I collect and that I use when I'm talking with startups, our portfolio companies, and even in training on it. And let me just cover those real quickly for you here. The first one is really conduct cybersecurity training and awareness. Uh, Most people do not understand that what cybersecurity is. They don't understand what a phishing attack is. They don't understand, like Donald was talking about, don't click on those links and go there. Don't They don't look at the header and says, gee, this is from Bank of America, but it's actually taking me to a website in China. That's not going to happen with Bank of America. But do that type of training and awareness. You need to perform some risk assessments. I can tell you, even on my home network, I perform risk assessments, and we changed our passwords on our router and our modems regularly. We go and update all of our software. We are diligent about doing things like that. So you perform the risk assessment, you do your vulnerability management, your software patches and updates. Also, there's a concept called the principle of least privilege. Don't give everybody super user passwords to everything. Only give people the rights to access what they need. So for many of the people who use different things within my organization, a lot of our data sources, we only give them read access. They cannot write and update because they don't have a need to do that. So we utilize the principle of least privilege. The largest data breach in healthcare, which was with Anthem, was because a privileged account was compromised in the back end of their system, which had no security, and that resulted in $100 billion data breach because they were not using the principles of least privilege and they did not have security on the back end. Next thing, enforce password security, storage, and process and policies. Change your passwords reasonably often. Use complex passwords. Use uppercase, lowercase numbers, letters, numbers. Use special symbols and mix them up. Don't use your birthday. Don't use your anniversary and other things that are easy to find. The other thing is secure password storage. I cannot tell you how many times I've written through organizations, walked through organizations, and on a post-it note, put to a board in a cubicle or an office, I'll see a password. Or pick up a notebook and turn it over and see a whole list of passwords written on the bottom of that notebook. That's not good cybersecurity. My sixth one, implement a robust business continuity and response plan. Do backups, even do backups at home, which I say later on, but know what to do, know how you're doing it. If you, part of a business continuity plan is having records to things. If you do mostly online banking, make sure you have all your account numbers somewhere. Make sure you can go ahead and go and get in and access what your balance was. I cannot tell you how many people who have been attacked and locked out of things had no idea even what their balance was, what their account numbers were, because they no longer use any paper. Everything's digital. And once your computer is locked out, you don't have access to those digital records. So you need to have a continuity plan. Do periodic security reviews, back up your data. Even at home, my home computers, my son's computers and others, we regularly back up all the data. Not necessarily all the programs, but we back up all the data and do that regularly with an automated program. Use encryption for data at rest and transit. I no longer go to websites that are just HTTP. I look up and only go to websites that are HTTPS, which is a level of encryption on it. And that way your data is encrypted at rest and transit. If you just write software, if you do networks, you have to do it with security in mind. And the last one is really important in today's time, is implement strong security standards and input. So for example, on most banking apps today, most of the big e-commerce sites and things, you can implement something called two-factor authentication. So what I do is you enter a password, but then it will either send you to your mobile phone a text message with a code. It will message another device. You can use a third-party device that will send it and verify back and forth random numbers. But the simplest thing you can do today to increase your cybersecurity dramatically is on most of your accounts, go to a stronger type of two-factor authentication at least. And that will dramatically increase your security vulnerabilities there. These are just 11 simple ones. I could actually, Sharif, go ahead and put together a list of another 20 easily. But these are 11 that will serve most people very well, most small companies and others very well to protect themselves in a time that's only going to get worse. So Sharif, thank you for letting me go through those.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Donald.
Well, thank you, David, for that great list. You notice that everybody now, not everybody, but many people are encouraging you to do two-factor authentication, which is far more secure than passwords. Passwords, there's ways of getting your password. Say, for an instance, you go into an airport. There's a program you can download called Wireshark. And Wireshark allows you to look at all of the network traffic, the Wi-Fi traffic that's happening. And so if you know how to use Wireshark, you can see somebody's password. You can actually grab it right through the Wi-Fi, because the Wi-Fi's in airports are usually unencrypted. They have to be, because they, people have to be able to use them without without having a password. So as David pointed out, there are many ways to crack into a system. I have like 4 different antivirus programs on my system. And I'm very careful on my router to only have ports open that I actually need. And so I'm not, naive enough to believe that there's no possibility of getting attacked, or I mean, breached. But I know all the tricks of phishing and all of the various kinds of things like that. So I'm more safe than most people. And I think that the takeaway from that is I'm very paranoid, which is, I think it was Gordon Moore who just passed away, and wasn't him who said only the paranoid survived? Yes. So there you go. I want to, just emphasize what I said, that a lot of the human factors are the most important factors for what the way that you get attacked. I like another way that you get attacked is people just go and they try random passwords until they hit. So they start with 000, 001, 002, blah, blah, blah. And they go through all the numbers and letters in the alphabet. They start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 0, 1, 0, 2, blah, and so on like that, which is why longer passwords work better, because it takes a lot of iterations to get through a long password. And so longer passwords are better. But as David pointed out, with a quantum computer, you can get through a lot of passwords. That's why a lot of login programs, if you you blow your password 5 times or so like that, then they lock you out. Or another one, a common one, is that you do a kind of a timeout where the first one, it times you out for a second, then it times you out for 2 seconds, then for 4 seconds, then for 8 seconds, then for 16 seconds, and 32 seconds, and so on like that. And eventually you wind up being timed out for so long that it just makes it impossible for the program to be able to go through enough things to be able to crack. Sometimes people are just malicious. A very common one that has actually brought down the internet several times is denial of service attacks. And what they do with those is they just use, basically there's a facility, an ability within inside of the internet called ping. And what it does is it allows you to just ask a router if you're awake. And so you just send this packet to the router, and it then sends back a packet saying, yes, I'm awake. And so what they do is they send packets to the router so fast that the router can't do anything else. And so then when that happens, it can't do anything. So it doesn't work anymore. So it stops being able to send stuff. And so it basically brings down any traffic that particular router does. And it's major routers that do major traffic in the internet have been attacked that way. And that's what denial of service attacks are. And those are difficult to stop. And what people do to stop them is they make it so the router, they shut it off so that you can't tell if the router's alive or not, which has got its own drawbacks, because when you're trying to make sure, debug problems in the internet, you want to be able to test the routers and check to make sure they're alive. So every aspect of it, it's a kind of a race to try and create problems to solve problems. And ultimately, there's bad guys that are going to, as David pointed out, and both Davids have pointed out, the people are going to keep trying to do it and keep trying to steal things. I subscribe to this thing, which is free and you can get if you want to. It's called Hacker News. Just Google it. And every day I get a newsletter about the latest exploits that people have been finding and cures for them. So for an instance, people will find bugs in Microsoft Windows, and those bugs allow the bad guys to it makes it easier for the bad guys to do the things that I was talking about, where it gets in and you're allowed to write on the disk and change things inside of the program, get inside of the operating system and get access to the inside into your files and other parts of your computer. And so anyway, that's something that you can do to protect yourself, is get that, and it'll warn you. Another thing to protect yourself is always do updates. Make sure that you update every single solitary program on your computer. You update your operating system the instant there's a new version of the operating system, because the updates many times are there for security bugs, and that's what they do. They're fixing problems that the bad guys have found, and that'll protect you. That's absolutely critical. So now routers have default firewall thing. Go in there and turn them on. Make sure you turn them on. Get an antivirus program. My favorite is Kaspersky. And the reason it's my favorite is I got a virus years and years and years ago, and I wrote them, and I wasn't even using their program. And they told me to do a memory dump, and they told me how to do it. And I sent it to them, and they sent me back a program, one of those kinds that I was talking about, that's all in machine language. And I ran the program, and it removed the virus and fixed my computer. And I thought, man, these guys really know what they're doing. And so I've been using that ever since. They're Russians. And I have a lot of the bad guys are Russians, but some of the very, very good guys are Russians as well. I know a Russian guy that basically he protects computer games, because computer games are a huge target for crackers, and they're very, very difficult to protect. And they're basically what are called zero-day exploits. Computer game makers calculate how much money they're going to make by how long they think it's going to take till the game gets cracked. Because people buy the game until the game gets cracked, and once it's cracked, it's free. And so they make money until it gets cracked, and then they stop making money. And so if a zero-day exploit means that it gets cracked on the first day, and when it gets cracked on the first day, they basically make no money from their computer game. And they spent quite a bit of money making the computer game. And this particular Russian made a defense that didn't ever get cracked. He's a genius. But he was so good that he could fix a bug in Word with an assembler. He knew computers so incredible, how computers and those machine codes worked so well. He could do absolutely anything. But that's who we're up against. I mean, people who understand how these computers work better than you could possibly imagine. And so anyway, you, the listener, is responsible for for learning about computers yourself. In a way, having computers be so easy to use is kind of a problem, because people have become less computer literate than they were early on using computers. Because when you were first using computers, you had to know something about how they worked to use them, because they weren't that easy to use. And so you had to learn what a disk drive was, and what booting was, and all these kinds of things. And now you just punch a button and they start working, and you punch a button and they do this, and you punch a button and they do that, and you people don't have any concept of how they're working. So if you need to take some time and understand a little bit about how they work, and you can start to understand what it is that they're doing to you and the kinds of things that they're doing. So that's the main problem is going to be you. You're the most likely person to cause a problem in cybersecurity. So my advice is to learn something, subscribe to Hacker News, spend a little bit of time, and that's going to be the biggest protection that you can have. And thank you.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. David Schumacher for concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. Yes, I'll need to go right after my closing remarks here today. In summary, talked about how cybersecurity is essential to protecting our digital world, ensuring privacy and security of sensitive information, maintaining reliability and availability of critical networks and systems. There's a lot in that, but that in essence is what cybersecurity is. There's many business opportunities in cybersecurity for products, services, and those are all continuing to grow or expected to continue to grow, as the other panelists have said, over the coming years. We talked a little bit about innovative cybersecurity solutions that are essential for trying to stay ahead of cyber threats and providing this protection that we want. The solutions require ongoing research and development, requires ongoing collaboration between security experts, the technology providers, and business. Those all need to be in this together. So take what's been said here, use it personally, use it to educate yourself, use it to make your business, whether you're an employee or a business owner, more secure, and use this information to continue to educate the others that are around you. Security is much like a length of chain, and you break any one part of that chain and it's all compromised. So once again, we're all in this together. Cybersecurity experts, the technology providers, and business leaders. Thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Now I request Professor David Smith for your concluding remarks.
Dr. Sharif, thank you so much for letting me be part of this. I just want to go back and echo what I had said before. It's not if you have been attacked, it's when you're attacked, and you most likely have already been attacked and don't know it. I can tell you I ran some statistics while we were on the air here, and my router blocked 12 different scanning attempts just while we were on the air of different type of actors in there. So what Donald talked about protecting yourself in your company, in your home, is true. The other big thing I will tell you is protect in layers. You don't want to use one product, you want to use multiple layers. Donald referenced this as well. and it's very important for you to do. Be careful. Move as quick as you can to two-factor authentication on as many platforms as you can. I hate it because it takes the extra steps, but I like it for the security. And two-factor authentication is one of the easiest ways to get over a lot of the non-state actor type of cybersecurity attacks, or the non-large cybersecurity attacks, because it's not worth the time for people to go to the efforts it takes to do that. If you're a company, I actually, no matter where you are in the world, I would encourage you to go to the NIST website in the United States. NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards. And look at their cybersecurity section on it. Look at the cybersecurity common security framework. It's an excellent framework, and one that is adaptable to all size of organizations and even sophisticated personal users. If you're in a critical industry, look at the NIST quantum security section. Quantum computing is going to change a lot of our crypto keys, a lot of the cryptography. And if you're a large company of banking, healthcare, you need to be aware of that too. But keep yourself educated and understand that what you implemented on your computer 2 years ago is way out of date. What you implemented on your computer last year is out of date. And update your applications, update your virus signature, update your firewall walls. I use whitelist, blacklist on my computers all the time. I blacklist things that I see where they don't even come through the router when it hits the router. And that helps protect me. Some of the publications that Donald talked about is a good one. Another one I use is called Darkroom, and others like that, which if you follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, you see I actually post the articles from the most egregious cybersecurity threats pretty often. But it's you have to be diligent. The bad guys are going to try to always be ahead of you. So you're always in a catch-up mode, and you have that mindset to stay secure in today's increasing threat environment. So Dr. Sharif, thank you again for allowing me to be part of this.
Thank you. Mr. Donald, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, I'm going to reiterate what I've been saying, which is that the most important person, the most important cybersecurity person is you, and you. I think that what David said. Put it in perspective. You may not be attacked. Like, I don't get attacked. My router doesn't get attacked very often, but you should believe what David said. In other words, you may not get attacked, but you should act as if you get attacked every day. Whether or not you do, just believe that you do. Because, as I said before, only the paranoid survive. And I think David said articulated something that I was saying, which is that about layers. And I have many layers. I have the router, and then there's what are called ports, which is basically another firewall that you have in the computer. So there's a firewall in the router and then a firewall in the computer. So there's two firewalls. And then I also use several layers with antivirus. I have a couple of antivirus programs that check the program, anything itself that I download, it checks it for viruses. And I also keep your antivirus software completely up to date, because the antivirus software, basically these organizations they look for new viruses, and as soon as they find new viruses, they put them in their databases so that the antivirus software will recognize the new viruses. And so in order for you to be able to stop the new viruses, you have to have the new viruses in your database. So it's really a good idea to, it's absolutely critical that you download those databases as often as you can. And that's one of the reasons I have 4 antivirus programs on my computer, because one of them might get the virus before another. So as I said, I'm very careful about that. And I'm also careful about what I download. If you're downloading stuff from sites that you have a good reason to trust, like Microsoft or major sites like that, it's not so bad. But if you're downloading software from some site that is less well known, it's better to be cautious. Maybe even wait a day before you run it. And another layer of protection that I have is that I run the antivirus software on the programs that are on my disk. So after I've downloaded the program, every night, those antivirus programs look at all the new programs that I've downloaded, and also my operating system, and they look there to see if there's any viruses that they can find there. And so it's constantly checking for viruses. So logically, if I downloaded a new program, I downloaded the latest antivirus software, then it's very likely that it would find a virus that had been downloaded. So if I downloaded a new program and waited for a day before I ran it, it'd be far less likely that it would have a virus that would get me. But still, it's not impossible that you would get it. So anyway, you have a lot of power to prevent, to be for cybersecurity, but you need to kind of understand what it is that they're doing, and try and understand something about your computer, like understand what a disk is and how files are stored, understand what memory is, and have a basic idea of how computer programs run. It's not that complicated to have a basic idea. I mean, so that's really my final comment, is that it's the same thing I've been saying all along, is that you have a lot of, humans have a lot of ability to make these things much, much safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. You know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are growing extremely fast with business organization, NGO, corporations, government organization, everybody collaborating with World Talent Economy Forum. Recently, we just start our work with more than 100 corporations from around the world. We just finished our India tour. We also collaborate with IIT. You know that IIT, all of the brilliant engineers they are producing, including CEO of Google and Microsoft. Uh, so we are working with their business incubations. Already, we find that they have 117 uh, startup with the valuation of $3 billion. So hopefully, with this kind of collaborations, World Talent Economy can contribute more in emerging economy. And I want to give special thanks to our speakers, Mr. Donalds, Mr. David Smith, Mr. David Schumacher, those who continuously support World Talent Economy Forum. I can commit to all of you. Perhaps it will be one of the fastest growing think tank in emerging economy where more than 10,000 corporations right now they are working together for global goods. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye bye and take care. Take care.